This morning, the Constitutional Court made its ruling on the UDM's application to force the Speaker of the National Assembly, ballot, to prescribe a vote of no confidence in Jacob Zuma as a secret ballot. Joining us in studio for live analysis is Pepelape Dube from the Centre for Constitutional Rights to get her views on the ruling. Pepelape, thank you very much for joining us. And yes, as I mentioned, this ruling was finally made just under an hour ago. Personal feelings aside, do you feel that the right ruling was made and in line with our Constitution?
Hi, thank you for having me. Well, I think the ruling itself really doesn't come as much of a surprise, because if one goes into the history of the Constitutional Court in matters involving the other branches of government, the Constitutional Court is keenly aware of the doctrine of separation of powers, and the Constitutional Court tends to give great deference to the other branches of government. So I think really it doesn't come as much of a surprise. It would have been very difficult for the Constitutional Court to tell the National Assembly how exactly it should go about conducting its day-to-day business.
Now let's go back a few months. Of course, this motion, this movement all started very much in the wake of President Jacob Zuma's cabinet reshuffle, the axing of Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan, two ratings agency downgrades, and then of course you had the opposition very much on the bandwagon, the UDM leading it. Do you think that their argument or motivation for their argument was strong enough? Of course, the first debate was postponed, which was meant to be on the 18th of April.
Yes, I think their arguments were strong enough, but at the same time we need to understand that the Constitution more or less envisages a situation in which everybody in government, from the executive to Parliament to the Constitutional Courts, are all coming to their table and they're all doing their jobs. So I think ultimately this is a political matter which really shouldn't have ended up before the courts. But I think because of our more or less dysfunctional party political system, in which there's probably very little oversight and accountability and transparency within the political parties, I think this is why we see these sort of matters ending up before the Constitutional Court.
Now, of course, the Constitutional Court ruling that the Speaker does in fact have power to prescribe this vote of no confidence. The question now is, will she go through with it?
I think here the fascinating thing to take note of is the fact that the Speaker of the National Assembly herself did admit in the papers that she filed before Parliament that she's not opposed to the secret ballot itself, but that she just wasn't sure whether the rules and the Constitution allowed her to go ahead and order that particular secret ballot. So I think here the question would be, if she has already admitted to that, and the court has agreed with her that she does in fact have that power, I think the question is, how exactly is she going to go forward with all of us knowing what we know now?
And then what, in your opinion, can opposition parties do? What will they do to try and motivate her to prescribe this secret ballot?
Well, I think there are two things really. I think first of all, it's a question of going back to the drawing board. It's a question of any of the political parties requesting her to, as a matter of urgency, place the motion of no confidence on Parliament's role so that it's debated as a matter of urgency. And if that doesn't happen, I think the courts are once again an option or an avenue that's still open to these parties, because I think they've got the very strong backing of the Constitutional Court. So I think it's the Speaker of Parliament is going to be in a very difficult position to refuse to allow that motion of no confidence.
The UDM's argument also that MPs won't be voting with integrity, that obviously referring to the factions within the ANC, that there's been death threats and they've been threatened to be axed if they don't sort of show their loyalty to President Jacob Zuma. How much of that do you believe is true?
Well, I think here there are two issues, and I think first of all the important thing here, and which I found quite interesting, is the fact that if we listen closely to Mogoeng's reading out of the judgment today, he kept making specific references to the oath of to the oath of office that members of parliament have sworn. Just the fact that their first duty is loyalty to the constitution, and the fact that they're beholden to act in accordance with the constitution, to uphold the rule of law and to uphold the constitution on behalf of the nation. So I think in a sense it was that reminder that even if the secret ballot, but that even if the motion of no confidence is conducted by a secret ballot, that they should still do so, being cognizant of what the Constitution calls for. But I think a second point on that, and this is a more legal argument, but if we look at what the Constitutional Court has previously said in such matters, the Constitutional Court has said that it shouldn't matter what the motive or the motivation for a politician is when it comes down to voting. So basically the Constitutional Court has said the first duty is to the Constitution, but if it isn't to the Constitution, then there is no legal obligation to go beyond that and try to assess the reasons as to why a particular member of parliament votes in a specific manner. So I think from a legal perspective, there's very little that can be done to ensure that members of parliament vote in a specific pattern.
Now, Pepe Lape, if this vote of no confidence goes ahead, and hypothetically speaking, the vote of no confidence wins the majority, please explain then the process thereafter. What actually happens? We've been so focused on the vote of no confidence, the secret ballot. Let's sort of look ahead. What would happen, hypothetically speaking?
Now, the significance of this particular vote of confidence, vote of no confidence, is that it not only removes the president if successful, but it also removes the cabinet as well as deputy ministers. So that would mean that Cyril Ramaphosa as deputy president would also be removed from his office. And in terms of the constitution, the third in line would then be the Speaker of Parliament, Baleka Mbete. So she herself would be the de facto president. But she would only be the de facto president until such a time that the other members or the remaining members of the National Assembly then get together and appoint or rather elect a new president. And all of this has to take place within 30 days.
So she's suddenly become a very powerful person. I guess a lot of people might see her as sort of holding the future of South Africa in her hands with her decision to prescribe this secret ballot.
Absolutely. Absolutely. She's in a very powerful position. I mean, apart from being in the governing party's National Executive Council, apart from being the Speaker of the National Assembly, but she's very much she could be the de facto president of South Africa.
Okay. Pepe Lape, while I have you here, I'd also like to get your opinion on the recent saga involving the South African Reserve Bank and the Public Protector and her motion to change the constitution with regards to protecting the sovereignty and the strength of the currency.
Well, I think I join a long line of legal analysts who are of the view that she possibly misconstrued her powers, because there's really nothing in the Public Protector Act or the Constitution that grants her the power to recommend that the Constitution be amended. And not just that, but we need to bear in mind that the events that she says took place occurred in a period from 1985 to 1992. And it seems almost irrational to then order that the Constitution be amended in order to rectify wrongdoing that took place almost 30 years ago. So I think on that basis, it appears as if she simply misconstrued her powers.
So how do you see that saga playing out?
Well, already ABSA and the Reserve Bank have indicated that they're going to take the report for review, and I think any court that's worth its salt is definitely going to strike down that particular recommendation. So we'll be basically back to square zero in regard to that report.
Okay, Pepe Lape, thank you very much for your insight this morning. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.